So, Space Jam 2 is here, and after causing a ridiculous controversy over a truly terrible piece of promo art, I, as a self-proclaimed professional Lola-ologist, knew I had to watch the movie and analyze how Lola Bunny was handled in this film. Yes, I'm serious, it's a long story. I hope you'll join me for my upcoming online Lola-ology lecture series. Shockingly, Space Jam: A New Legacy hurt less than I expected. That doesn't mean it's good, but I'll at least call it better than Looney Tunes Back in Action. That film hurt me. The tunes were, in fact, surprisingly loony. There was more 2D animation than I expected, and it had less cringe than I had feared. The movie did a shockingly good job of keeping its politics in its pants, and had they not foolishly pointed out the lack of Pepe Le Pew, no one would have noticed. It's also worth mentioning that the actual plot of Space Jam 2 is that Space Jam 2 is a terrible idea that needs to be stopped. I'm actually serious. An out-of-control algorithm at Warner Brothers determines that LeBron James is the biggest celebrity in the world and wants to introduce technology to CG him into classic Warner Brothers movies, which LeBron James flat out says is a terrible idea and that the algorithm is stupid and broken. This pisses off the algorithm and he kidnaps LeBron James' son and forces LeBron to beat him in basketball. It was also the algorithm's idea to CGify the Looney Tunes, which is portrayed in the film as bad and horrifying, and actively pisses off Bugs Bunny, and when the villain is beaten, they all go back to 2D. Spoilers, by the way, the villain gets beaten. Yeah, I think maybe halfway through production of this film, they realized the whole thing was a terrible idea, but were too far in to stop now, and corporate probably loved it, so just subtly dunk on the film in progress, I guess. So yeah, Space Jam 2 is the product of a broken, stupid AI algorithm that needs to be stopped. Whose idea it was to make LeBron James the star. Yeah. Anyway, we're off topic. We need to get back to Lola Bunny. As someone who has studied this character for 20 years, I had more than a few fears about how they'd handle her. First, I was afraid the character would be deemed too controversial and problematic and get sidelined and have no screen time, as she usually has been for the past 25 years since her creation. Secondly, I was afraid that they would use Lola Bunny as a political mouthpiece. Ugh. Lastly, I was afraid they would completely ruin her character. Again. No offense, Lola is the best character in the Looney Tunes show and completely makes that series, but that is about as not Lola as a character could possibly get. If I could, I'd say that they should, like, make her Lola's twin sister or something. That actually has a lot of comedic potential. Friendly reminder that the only reason she is that way in the Looney Tunes show is because the writers had no clue who Lola was, so they just wrote her voice actress Kristen Wiig instead. Yes, I'm serious. But much to my shock, they fell into none of those pitfalls. Lola gets more than twice the screen time she had in the original Space Jam, is central to the plot, the film avoids overt political statements, thank you, and Lola is the most Lola she's been in decades. I know some people have complained that Kath Soucie does not return as Lola in this film, and while that would have been nice, Lola's voice has frequently been inconsistent, and when a company can get a named actor to voice a character, they do. So yeah, Lola is voiced by Zendaya, who does a fine job.
I'd like to try out for the team.
I will help you deliver justice to the one they call Algae, and save the son of the Brawn. Hey guys!
Speedy Gonzalez in this movie is voiced by Gabriel Iglesias though, so it's not just a Lola thing. It's a gotta have that celebrity voice thing. It's a one-off. I did record and clip out all of Lola's scenes in the film, and the final breakdown is 5 minutes of 2D Lola, which is almost the exact same amount of time as the original Space Jam, believe it or not. She was only in that film for 5 minutes. And 8 minutes of CG Lola for a grand total of 13 minutes of on-screen Lola Bunny. This may not sound like a lot in a 2-hour-long movie, but it actually kind of is. As for her role in the film, well, the Looney Tunes are scattered across multiple Warner Brothers IP worlds, and Lola winds up in a Wonder Woman comic book world, taking the test of the Amazons. She gets recruited last because of LeBron's request for at least someone who knows how to play basketball. From then on, she serves as a voice of reason and basically the tune-to-basketball interpreter for LeBron James. See, the plot of this movie revolves around LeBron James being too serious about basketball and not letting his son or the Looney Tunes be themselves because he keeps trying to force people to be like him. So Lola tries to relay the Tunes' concern in a way LeBron can understand. I'm gonna say this movie is probably better if you know nothing about LeBron James other than that he is a basketballsman who is supposedly quite popular. I will say I appreciate that they gave him a character flaw and an arc, though. He's kind of a jerk in this movie, and it works. 2D Lola looks pretty darn good. I was surprised by how much 2D animation was in this film, and while it's nowhere near as good as the jaw-dropping artistry of the original Space Jam's animation, seriously, look at that shading, it still looks pretty good when it's properly in motion. In stills, not that great, but in motion, quite nice. CG Lola sometimes looks really bad, but much of the time looks pretty alright, in motion at least. I'd say the best she looks is in the, inexplicable Porky Pig rap scene. It's not as bad as you think, but not as good as you'd hope. Either way, I think Lola's model looks the best here, and that outfit looks nice. Also feels like a good callback to the 90s hip-hop Looney Tunes merch. Anyone remember that? The 90s were weird. Much ado has been made about Lola's bust, or lack thereof, but it's pretty inconsistent, as it always has been. Official artwork of Lola like this is rather rare, pretty much just Bob Guthrie's model sheet that almost no one uses, and the comic bunny changes everything. Beyond that, Lola has traditionally been shown as having only slight upper body curves, and some of the Space Jam: A New Legacy artwork actually reflects this. In the film, it is equally inconsistent. They clearly did not want to portray her as being as hot as she was in the original film, but didn't want to drastically alter her design either. I completely understand the disappointment here, but, y'all new around here, aren't ya? We'll cover this in greater detail in another video, but Lola's entire existence has been a struggle between being too sexy and too not. Even back in the 90s, Warner Brothers was toning her down. Heck, during her creation, she was at one point so desexualized that she, and I quote, looked like a 12-year-old boy. And it was supposedly McDonald's complaining about WB making Bugs into a gay pedophile that caused them to freak out and give Lola proper curves in the first place. I cannot stress this enough. This is a struggle. So while yes, I would have liked her to look more like she did in the first movie, I also know that the whole reason we've barely seen her in the 25 years since her creation is because of this. And when she does reappear, it's usually with drastic redesigns like these. People, this is the alternative, and in a choice between this and this, I'll take the Space Jam 2 version. Friendly reminder that this is supposed to be a cartoon for kids. Indeed, this is not the only new Lola Bunny design going around, because Bugs Bunny's Builders is coming soon, where Lola looks like this. I don't know much about this show, but from my understanding, it is for a very young demographic. Now, look at this design, and then complain about her lack of bust without feeling at least a little bit silly. With that in mind, I think it looks fantastic. It's cute as heck. I look forward to seeing how they handle Lola in this show. So, with all this having been said and done, Space Jam: A New Legacy actually did shockingly okay with how they handled Lola Bunny. The film wasn't good, but it was nowhere near as bad as people claim. I wouldn't recommend it, but it has been blown out of proportion. And yes, I'm serious about those Lola-ology lectures. I've watched hundreds of Lola-based flame wars and controversies erupt in the internet over the past 20 years, and every time I scream into my pillow because everyone involved doesn't even know the half of it. So, may as well teach them, I guess? Oh, before I go, I should note there's an official featurette you can find online as a promo for Space Jam: A New Legacy called The Bunny and the Goat, which is a bunch of those fake movie interview things, and some of the people interviewed are the cartoon characters. Yeah, Lola gets like 16 more seconds there, and I think more lines than she had in the entire original Space Jam. Cripes, it was only when looking for some voice comparison clips for this video that I realized just how little she got to talk in the first film. Anyway, that's a little extra Lola for this film, or adjacent to it anyway. Anyway, catch you later. See ya in class?